Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Matt. Hang on, I want to try
Okay.
something. Okay, speak again, Matt. Okay, speakers aren't working.
You could change it out. The little speaker icon.
Ah. Try this again. Speak again, Matt.
Keep singing.
Okay. We're just going to do the best we can without the speaker. Is Sonia here? Is she coming?
No, Sonia isn't going to be able to make it. She had a doctor appointment for one of her kids was sick this morning, unfortunately, so it'd be just me from our office.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we can get started then. Everyone who needs to be here is here, correct?
Yep, I believe so.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Here with us in this meeting, we have
Good morning.
Our village board, Scott Beliski, Deb Padaleski, Jess Marciano, and myself, Marguerite Sherman. Absent is a trustee, Mark Crowell. He couldn't make it. He let us know this morning. I asked him if he wanted us to postpone until he could make it, but he told Scott that he didn't have to be here, correct?
Yes.
Because I think it's very important that the entire board get this information together that we need to have. We do have an audience because it's an open meeting, so I would like to have everyone please introduce themselves and tell us what your role is.
Morning, I'm Jason Schwartz. I'm the president of Donegan Incorporated. We're the village's financial advisor.
And this is Ed Russell. I'm with Hodgson Russ and Bond Counsel, and I believe my associate Ben Clark is also on.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Not
very
really
light.
loud.
Gotcha. 1 second. I am here. I'll mess with my mic later. Sorry to slow us down.
Okay. And I have to attend to a court hearing at 11:30. So if the call goes long, Ben will be here in my stead. So.
And I am Matt Brooks, the village attorney for Medina.
So this meeting is being held to discuss the protocol in following municipal law should a majority of the board decide to sell a new ladder truck that was just purchased by the village through a USDA loan. And if this decision is made by this board, we need to make sure that we are following protocol and the village would remain in good standing. And I guess we're just trying to gather some information and I know this is an unusual circumstance. Anyone I've talked to has said they've never dealt with anything like this. So we want to make sure we, dot our I's and cross our T's.
Of course.
So I don't know who would like to start, bond counsel or financial advisor first, and then we'll have Matt Brooks, our attorney, weigh in on some information, and maybe the board can, you can entertain some additional questions that the board may have.
Jason, do you want me to go first?
Sure, that works.
Okay, so under the provisions of the bonds, you're able to prepay, but the concern that bond counsel would have would be any tax implications for. And I should back up. If you're going to be selling the equipment, those were used with bond proceeds, and as such, there are tax consequences regarding the use of any bond proceeds that you're restricted on. For example, if you sell property, how you use the proceeds from that sale, and they should be used to basically repay the outstanding obligations, the bonds that were initially issued. So we would look at if this is the decision of the board that they want to follow through, we would look at what notices would need to be provided, and also confirm the process by which you'd repay the USDA for these, and make sure that it was done in compliance with the tax code.
So can you just clarify what you mean by the tax implications?
So essentially, the IRS does not want to see a situation where funds have been expended for the purchase of fire equipment. Fire equipment's now been purchased. You turn around and sell it at, let's say, a substantial profit, and therefore you basically used a tax exempt rate to acquire property by which now you've sold at a profit, for which now you are going to realize a gain. So there's an issue with what we call arbitrage, and using tax exempt interest rates to basically be able to get a better financial result than you would otherwise get if you've done it with conventional financing. So because of that, we would have to look at what the implications of any sale, what purchase price sold at, and we would just need to ensure that we comply with the code requirements if there, for example, is any payments or penalties related to this sale.
So if this truck were to be sold at a substantial profit and we paid off the loan with USDA, we would probably have some sort of tax penalty we would have to pay on any profit that we made?
There is a potential, but there's always a timing issue here as well, because there's certain safe harbors you're able to carve out. But I've not looked into that very deeply here, but given the timing here, you might well fit within some of those safe harbors. So we just have to dig into that. But, at the end of the day, I wouldn't want you not to sell it at a profit, because all that would mean is that you'd owe some additional taxes potentially to the IRS. But at the end of the day, you'd be made whole, which I think is the best option for the village. But same token, we want to make sure that whatever decision you make, whatever options you have with regards to the sale of this vehicle, are done so to minimize any negative tax implications.
So if the board were to purchase a used truck with any profits, would it have the same potential tax implications?
It could. Again, each circumstance is going to require its own kind of analysis. So but until we get kind of further down the road and which direction you decide to go in and what it's going to look like, it's a little too early to tell. With any definitive, I can't give a definitive answer on that right now. So.
And it depends a little bit based on who they sell it to, right? Like that's a factor in the analysis as well, or in terms of like whether they send to another, tax exempt entity like another village or fire district versus if they sell to a not for profit or some kind of private business.
Like a broker?
That's exactly right, Jason. Yep. So that's saying none of this is a roadblock to be able to get to where you need to get to. It just means that there needs to be a little bit of due diligence on our end to make sure that how you get there, that we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. But given this, we're at the beginning stages of this, and there's so many different what I'll call decision trees that have to be made to determine what the consequences are. That we'll have to see how things shake out as far as which direction you decide to go in, and then we can provide some guidance as to how to get there in the most beneficial means to avoid any kind of negative implications on the tax side of it.
And again, from the financial side, with the finance, I think Ed might have already mentioned this a little bit, but you did close on the loan with rural development. January 28th was the loan closing date, so that has been closed. But rural development does have terms in those closing documents where we can prepay and pay this off. So whenever you do reach, if the village does ultimately decide to sell the truck and you do reach an agreement for that sale, we can then give notice to RD and pay that off and save the remaining interest. So that's one benefit of rural development versus had this been a public market bond, is that you do have that ability to prepay it, whereas typically a public market bond of this size you might have been locked in for 8 years before you reach the call date. So
exactly.
Anyone have anything else from the financial advisors? Any questions?
I don't know. I don't know if you asked the right questions too, but based on what I just heard, first of all, thanks for new word arbitrage. That's going to be good. So when you said selling, I guess I didn't realize there were more than just villages and like municipal entities and fire districts that would be purchasing a ladder truck. What is an example of a nonprofit we could potentially be utilizing or who could potentially be bidding on this truck? I didn't even realize that was an option.
I mean, so when you put out the request for proposals regarding the purchase, depending on where you're publishing this RFP and how you typically do this, I mean, there's a whole host of typically I would see a municipality and or maybe a not-for-profit fire company, but there are but I assume also that this could go nationwide, so that you would restrict it to just being within the New York State area. So potentially there are for-profit fire companies or other for-profit entities out there that potentially might need or utilize this equipment. I mean, arguably a movie studio might want it for a potential use in a movie. I mean, there are a whole host of parties who might have an interest in purchasing this piece of equipment. And I don't want to speak for village council, but the idea here is to get the best price you possibly can to benefit the taxpayers. So.
Right, and then let's say, actually, I'll wait because I'm sure we're kind of getting into this. I'll wait. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what I was saying, I think the biggest one that you might not realize the distinction is, the fire department versus a fire district, right? So a fire district is its own taxing entity that can issue their own bonds. So that would be, more akin to a tax exempt entity versus a fire department as like a service contract with the municipality might more often be a little bit different, where they're more of a not-for-profit as opposed to a tax exempt municipal entity.
Okay, and then at risk of getting ahead, where does a broker fall into this story? Like if we, when we put out an RFP, would we be putting it out for both individual buyers and brokers, or would we have to make a decision on which direction we wanted to go in? And if so, what's the best educated way to approach that to ensure that we can maximize whatever profits we may realize?
Maybe I'll take that because I was doing some research and talking to the comptroller's office. There's no, once we get through the procedure of deciding it's going to be put up for sale and get the financial aspect done. There isn't a specific prescribed way that you have to sell it. We have to maximize or do our best to maximize the value to the village, to the taxpayer. There isn't a specific fixed way to do it. You can do it as long as you have some paper trail to back up and results to indicate you've done something to maximize the benefit. It could be anything from a broker to an RFP to go out for sealed bids, to go on an auction service. Lots of ways to do it. Not one way is recommended above and beyond another. Other than we have to, whatever method of sale that we choose should be one that the village believes it will yield the maximum benefits. So that's something we'll have to figure out, whether we talk to a broker, whether we talk to people in the know about fire equipment and they suggest one way or another to get it out there, to get offers or bids in. That's something that we'll have to figure out down the road. But we don't have to do one way or another. It's not prescribed. We just have to figure out the best way to maximize our value.
Okay, I'm sorry if we already covered this, but Matt, when you said get the financial aspect done, is that what we've already accomplished here by determining that rural development will allow us to prepay the loan, or is there an additional step we need to take?
Well, I think as Edmund from Hodgson Russ said, I mean, there's some research about tax liability and research that they would have to do, but yes, I think that's part of it. Figuring out that we can prepay, and we know we can. What are the costs? Besides potential tax liability, the costs of services of the financial advisor to make this change up, the costs involved with bond counsel. But other than figuring that out, which we're in the process of doing now, or going through these steps, the sale process is whatever is going to get us the maximum result, or whatever the board believes is going to get the maximum result. Like I say, there's no rule. You have to do it via auction. You have to do it by sealed bid, RFP. We do what we think is best. Hopefully we have and we should have something to back up in our file why we chose that way. But or if you get a bidder and the price is fantastic, you get an appraisal to say this is a good price. Some way to back up where we end up. And of course, if we were to go out to bid auction, I would think anything that we do would be subject to the right of refusal, because we're not going to get stuck with getting a low bid and have to take it. That would not be acceptable.
So we could put out an RFP, and then if proper bids didn't come in, we could seek a broker or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should. By the time we get to that point, we should hopefully, do a little homework and find out what we think is best. Speak to experts in the fire field, where they find the market is. But yeah, I mean, if we go through one means and say, an example is we don't cover our expenses, and maybe we're going to refuse all bids and say either we got to rebid or we got to rethink what we're doing. But however way we go out, we're not going to be obligated until we sign a contract. We're not going to be obligated via a auction site or via an RFP process. All bids are potentially rejectable if we don't like them.
And that goes the same with a broker. I couldn't find anything definitive about mine.
I would think so. That whatever agreement we sign with them, we would obviously have the right to, agree on a price.
I think the only additional thing that I found out was that if we did use a broker, that we would have to follow our procurement policy, because we would essentially be purchasing a service by using a broker. And I think the stickiest part is going to be just determining real market value. So I don't know if you have any advice, you know, regarding that. I mean, I know you just touched on it a little bit, but, because that would be the contention by the state controller's office at the end of the whole thing, you know, that we did not, you know, get fair market value.
I think certainly, and I saw in some of the research, you know, before a municipality ends up, you know, signing the paperwork and doing it, to back up that they are, you know, at a reasonable rate, you know, get a third party appraisal. Of course, that costs a little bit of money, but you know, the appraisal says, you know, in today's market, this piece of equipment is worth so and so, and that's a third party appraisal. And if you get that, or theoretically possibly more, I mean, I think, you know, that's something we could rely on. But another argument is, you know, when you go out to you know, a sealed bid process or even an auction, I mean, that can bring the fair market, you know, value. But you know, if it's you know, there have been auctions where it's not properly advertised, or not enough people see, or something else is going on where it doesn't get, you know, what you think it ought to get. So certainly, and I think, you know, I know we've used auctions internationals. We don't have to accept the bid typically. So, you know, if it wasn't where it's supposed to be or where we think it ought to, we could, you know, you could say, no, we're not letting it happen. We're not selling it, or, you know, we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it another way. But, you know, yeah, I mean, we're going to definitely, for the state, the comptroller, for any audits, we're going to want to make sure that we have something in our file that, you know, we realized, you know, the best price we could.
I mean, I know the fire truck market is kind of crazy right now with like cost increases and like delivery times. But I mean, would there be any basis for just, I mean, the truck was just purchased within the last month, so would there be any basis for saying that as long as they exceed the current price, that the price of the current truck could be considered the fair market value since they just purchased it?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think that's a question for, you know, either a broker or someone appraiser that can say, you know what, even though we paid 1.7, it's today's market, you know, it's worth, you know, 2.5, or it's worth, or also the time factor, the fact that, you know, you can get it today as opposed to waiting, you know, for a couple of years. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I suppose that certain people have an expertise in that we would have to talk to.
Margaret, do you know, I don't know if you would know this or if you'd have to check, but I mean, how did they purchase this truck in the first place? Was that, I mean, I think when we work with fire districts a lot, I think a lot of times they're just, you know, purchasing direct from you know, some of the vendors who sell these things. I'm blanking on some of the names of, you know, the 2 or 3 main fire truck companies that we see people buying stuff from. But I mean, I don't know how they price that out typically. I mean, I don't know if you could go back to the vendor and say, you know, what if we were looking to purchase that, like, you know, just going straight to the people who provide these trucks on a new basis, like, what would it cost to buy this truck today? I don't know if that's an avenue that could be looked at for fair market value, or.
Yeah, that's possible. They did it through Sourcewell, which is approved through our municipality for getting equipment. And we could go back, you know, to Sourcewell and ask them also.
We can buy direct from there.
Following the procurement for the state with the Sourcewell, we brought direct through Pierce.
Yeah.
But that was what they found.
Yeah, I think Pierce.
Yeah, I think.
Or Pierce, maybe just go into Pierce.
Yeah, well, we bought directly from Pierce, but with New York State procurement laws, we piggybacked off the Sourcewell contracts. So that's their sort of their state rates. So, you know, same thing for, you know, if it was a private company needs a fire truck, they wouldn't necessarily be able to piggyback on a Sourcewell. They would have to pay maybe slightly more, you know. But by us to procure something that expensive, we had to, you know, do a state-approved contract or go out to bid. But yeah, we ultimately contracted with with the fire company manufacturer. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess you could go right to them and say, what would you, sell this to a private company for, today, or, as close as you can, because obviously things change and fire trucks change. But, or on the other hand, look at what Sourcewell, would have for it today. It might be a little less on Sourcewell, but no matter what, whether we're selling to a municipality or a private company, we want to maximize. And we're outside of sort of Sourcewell, and the fact that someone wouldn't have to wait, a couple of years. This is something that someone could have right away. So there's a time value to that.
I've got to jump off, but as I said, Ben's going to be on. But if there's any research that's needed, what I want to be is cost conscious and productive as possible. So, for example, if I think if you get all bids back and they're all from not-for-profits or municipal entities, then there doesn't need to be research related to private use or things like that. So I think what we'd like to do is, as you move further down this course of action and kind of determine which direction you're going to go for selling, and then and what responses you get back and kind of the pricing, then we can kind of dive in and do some of that research at that point. That way we're not searching down and going down other avenues that might not ever come to fruition. So, but with that, I'll jump off and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So moving on to bond counsel. So I believe that we paid approximately $42,000 to secure the loan through USDA. Is that correct? That
I would have to look through our billing for that to confirm. But if that number, sounds right, we can work with that number as we speak for now.
so that money is, if we turned around and sold that truck, that money is spent, correct? Through the loan that we took.
Right, because you're still closed on the loan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if we needed to take out another loan for a used truck, we would have to go through the same process and pay money again to go through bond counsel, correct?
Yes, if you did another borrowing for it, the point that you made earlier that there may be enough of profit, so to speak, from selling this truck and getting a used one, that money could go towards that as well. But again, there would be tax implications that myself and Ed would have to look at before we could give a definitive answer. Because as we discussed, there's a couple different ways you can go, and each of them have their own implications as a result.
I'm assuming that the answer to this is general fund, but let's say that we just realize an enormous profit and it allows us to have what we need for the fire department, and there's still a remaining profit. If we really see an outstanding profit, can that money move to the general fund, or does it have to be earmarked for a purpose?
That is a good question. I think once you sell it, it could go to the general fund. I would defer to Jason more on that. But I would look into that before I gave you a definitive answer on that front. Again, assuming that we A, sell it, and then B, get enough of a profit to cover the new truck. There's two assumptions built in there as well.
Right. That's my understanding. Go ahead, Matt.
I would, defer, and I think we would do some research. My initial impression is that probably it would go to the general fund and we could spend it, however, after we pay all the expenses, after we pay off the loan, and then, all the additional expenses. But whatever's left, I believe, could go to, of course, I'm not suggesting that we don't double check, but it's a sort of this, as selling any other type of surplus. We could direct where to go, whether it go to the general fund or whether it go to, the fund that we have for the fire department. Sometimes when a department sells its surplus, we let them put the proceeds into their budget for equipment. My initial impression, it would go general fund, but we can double check that.
Would you advise, Jason, that that went into like a special, maybe like a special reserve type of fund? I mean, not a real legal reserve, but, just so that all the expenses associated with, that surplus, those surplus funds were, spent appropriately. Not sure how that would work.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Matt's point about what he just said, I mean, that's kind of a village decision, I guess. I mean, I would think, if you're selling the fire truck and you're going to need to replace the fire truck, I would think that would, definitely would make some sense to put that money aside, kind of earmarks, however formally or not formally you want to do that, for, purchase of another truck, a used truck, if that's what you're looking to do. But I don't believe that's required. I think that's kind of a village decision. The only requirement is that the proceeds have to be used to pay off the loan first. So you have to, from the sale proceeds, you have to, if the bond was not payable, you have to put it into a mandatory reserve for debt to be able to make future payments. But in this case, since we can pay it off, we can probably bypass that step and just use the proceeds to pay off the RD loan. And then once that's completed, that it would be up to the village how to use those other funds. But I would think that would make some sense, that if there's going to be another truck purchase in the future for some other needs, that the surplus could go to help, paying for that cost if it was set aside for that.
Anyone have anything else?
This might just be for Matt, but, is there a purchase price or sale price of an item being surplus that would be subject, or is there anything about selling this vehicle that would be subject to a permissive referendum? Or we have to hold it for a period of time, or are we good to take action when we know what our decisions are?
That was something I looked into too. For instance, if we were a town, yes, a referendum would have to be there. For some reason, there's no corresponding legislation in New York State with regard to a village. So, and I asked that same question to the comptroller's office attorney when I spoke to him last week. So no, this is kind of solely a board decision. We don't have to do any type of, public. I mean, you can do a permissive if the board chose to and ask the question. You can always do that. There's no, of course, those are not binding either. But there's not a requirement for us to sell it. And I think for instance, that other fire truck, used one that the village purchased, and we got from the town escapes me, but I believe they had to go through a referendum for the permission to sell that truck to us, which they did. But there's no such requirement for a village.
Yeah, I guess and maybe we're all coming to this, but if the board elected, immediately to move forward, move forward with the sale of the truck, what would the next steps in time frame be for that?
I think the next step, from financial advisor and bond counsel, they have a little bit of research depending on, how much it was sold for and to who, and to get things paid off. But I think really the next step for the village is to make a determination on how we're going to sell it, whether we're going to do an RFP, a sealed bid, which is very similar, broker, an auction. I think we have to figure out how to do that. And I don't know if that's a question you start off with the fire chief, because he knows more than me, at least, how much a truck might be worth, or where you find a truck, where you sell a truck, things of those natures. But I think, or maybe it's, to look for brokers, discuss it with brokers. But I think, I just think you have to carefully decide how you're going to sell it, because the worst case scenario is if you go through all this and you're penalized in the long run when you find out that you didn't sell it for for enough the fair market value, maximize the results. I wouldn't even say fair market value, maximize the results, whether you can get more than fair market value, but you have to make sure you do that. And that's not my area of expertise. I don't know who we talk to. We have to talk to somebody, whether it's fire chiefs, people in that industry, figure out the best way to buy and sell this type of equipment so we can get the best price.
And then I also think that the used vehicles are quite expensive also. And I guess we would need someone to work with us to figure out, look at the whole picture at what we would be doing if that was the decision that the board made as far as acquiring a used vehicle, going to bond without knowing what we would get for the sale of the other truck, and going, if we had to go back to bond council to take out, another loan, and the cost that it would be there, because we've already lost $42,000 with this first loan, unless we can make it back in a sale. But, spent, should I say, instead of lost. So there's just a lot to think about. A burning question that, I've been asked by people, what keeps other municipalities from purchasing trucks and reselling them to make money? Because this is these trucks are a hot commodity right now. Legally, where is the oversight?
I'm sorry if I cut you off, Matt, but that would be the points that Ed mentioned earlier. There are numerous IRS regulations that would prohibit you from doing so, or I shouldn't say prohibit, that would just require you to pay a portion of the profits made. And that goes back to Ed's points that he made earlier.
And when I talked to the comptroller's office, they said, there's of course there's no prohibition. We can always make a profit, but we're not supposed to. A municipality's not supposed to do this sort of an intentional back and forth. It's not a profit-making scheme. So, we'd have problems with the comptroller's office, with probably our own auditors, if we did it over and over again, and we, with some, way to make money. But yeah, it's frowned upon. It's not supposed to be done as a you're supposed to realize the best amount, but it's not some money-making scheme that a municipality buys equipment at a lower rate because, they're a municipality and they can get a state rate and then they sell it to somebody else. You're not supposed to do that. And there are rules about that. I think this is a one-time deal. So, I don't think we're going to draw red flags for it. But, if this was a habit, then, it would draw red flags.
No,
Right, 'cause it's not a service that the village should be doing, right? It's not one of your mission as a village.
Well, I think we can demonstrate that's not the case here.
yeah,
I would
just
say that.
just to be clear, yeah, we're not selling the truck, to buy something else. We're selling the truck because we can't afford it. And if we do buy another truck, it'll be something that we can afford.
Right. And I think just to kind of piggyback on what Ben and Matt said, the other reason you don't see it a lot is it's just a lot of risk too, right? Like right now, the market provides that, but that might not always be the case. There's a lot to go through, and what happens if you can't sell it for a profit? You have the cost of issuance, the interest expense of paying for it. So I think there's also risk associated with it that most people would not want it to do when they're really they need to spend their taxpayers' funds to buy the fire trucks that are needed to provide the service to begin with.
Anything else?
Yeah, so I want to make sure I understand next step. So our next step is to decide as a board what the path forward would be. So then once we make a determination, if we decide as a board we're going to sell the truck and we're going to utilize one of those options, then we contact bond council. Who do we contact to get the research going?
Yep, that would be contact Ed and myself, please, and we can tailor the research to what decision the village makes.
And there's a cost associated with that, or is that part of our package with y'all?
I will confirm that with the partner on the deal. He's the one that sends out the engagement letter and stuff of that nature.
Okay. So you'll do the research based on what we choose. Do we go forward during that time, or do we wait to get more information from you before we, like, if we chose to go RFP, could we start soliciting, or do we wait until we hear back from you?
I always take the most conservative course of action. So I would say wait until Ed and I get your response, just to make sure that the process you move forward with, whether it be RFP or otherwise, conforms to just so that you know this is the lane you have to stay in as we move forward with this process, rather than moving forward as we're working on it and then having to take a more ideal route. Just slow and steady, make sure that I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and that everything is done properly.
Okay, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but how much time are you imagining that it would take between we get in touch with you and you say, we want a broker, we want whatever our plan is. If we reach out to you and tell you the plan, when would we likely be able to begin our next step?
I would get on it right away, just because of the nature of this deal. I would make it a high priority. I hesitate to give you an exact timeline when we haven't made a decision of what the village is going to do yet. But what I can say is that I would get on this right away and get it to you as quickly as possible, so that the village can move forward in a timely fashion.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt. I just don't know what that. We're talking like weeks, months, like.
No, it shouldn't take a month.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with just going back to what Jason and Matt said earlier, going to Pierce and seeing, either asking them what a fair market value for this truck would be right now, or going to an outside, deferring to, someone from the outside to give an outside appraisal, correct? We could, if the board decided to do that, could start with that before having you get on anything, right, Ben?
Yes, that strikes me as part of the decision-making process as to whether or not to sell it. Because you would be doing your homework to figure out how much money you would be bringing in.
Yeah, I would think, if the board, I know the board has decided they want to move forward with this. I would say we ought to start researching ways in which to sell and talking to people that know how to sell it, and talking with experts in the industry and looking for places that need it. And so I don't see why we can't investigate that and get some background information in the meantime. Then the board can eventually decide, oh, you know what, the best way is to do a sealed bid, put it on, the statewide or, nationwide thing of the fire truck. And that might be the best way. So once we, do that background investigation, figure it out, let bond counsel know, they'll make sure that's okay. Then we get a bid in, we can analyze it, decide if that's enough first. And then the second thing is, make sure there won't, make sure there are no tax implications, things like that.
Okay, is there any research or any method of research that we could do that would accidentally disqualify a potential buyer? Like, let's say I call the fire department on the street and I ask them some questions and get some information from them, and then turns out they want to be one of the bidders. As long as the process is followed, any inside conversation I have with them would not disqualify them. Correct?
I don't see why. I mean, I don't think right now we have any, secret information. I mean, you can say we'd like to get so-and-so, or, we're interested in selling it, but, and certainly they might be interested. So when we go out to bid or however we do it, they can offer a bid. But if they meet, the top bidder, I don't see why. I mean, if it came to something that was some sort of confidential or inside information, then I think you'd reach out to me or one of these other gentlemen ahead of time. But I think the general prospect of selling it and this is what we got and what do you think it's worth, I don't think there's a problem there. I mean, they'll have to follow the procedure. And when it comes to bidding, we'll have other, if we go to a bid, sealed bid, we'll have other requirements, time to close, in certain places they may not be ready, so they might not be able to meet all the terms and there might not be the exact perfect bid. And those are the types of things we'll have to analyze when they come in to see if we want to accept that one. Some municipality might say, well, we want it and we got a good price, but we can't do it till we, whatever. So there'll be other factors, I'm sure, but, unless there's just someplace that's, perfect and it's the best price ready to go tomorrow, but we don't know. So we'll just have to see.
It was my understanding, what we said was that whatever avenue we took to sell it, as long as we were selling it above fair market value, whatever that is determined at, whether it's an appraiser for that or fair market value is really dictated by what someone will pay. And this isn't really unique. There's a lot of fire apparatus out there that is new, that is being sold due to fire companies and districts closing down. So it's not like you don't see a 23, a 24, a 25 for sale. I've talked to a few brokers with some numbers in mind that they've had, nothing formal or anything like that, but there is a couple different avenues. I believe that fair market value is established by what somebody is willing to pay. And, even with the bond, paying the broker. And my understanding was the broker fee is paid out of the proceeds. So to go and, see procurement on what we would do with that, I don't know if that would really imply, because it's not a service that we're buying. They're providing the service that is taking part of the proceeds. So I wasn't sure about that. Was I correct in the understanding that we could go with whatever avenue that we want and whatever, as long as we're getting fair market value? Is that the way that I understood that correct?
Well, there were a couple of comptroller opinions, and that the state comptroller turned me on to. And I don't know if you all have it yet. I think I forwarded it on Friday to the mayor. I don't know if it were distributed yet.
I forwarded them this morning.
Yeah, I got them Friday, but it's not just. I mean, it's great. Of course, we want to get more than what we paid and more than our expense, but really, the sort of the opinions say. The method of sale chosen, and I'm reading from one, however, should be the one that local officials believe will yield the best price or maximum financial benefit. So it's the manner that will best price, and hopefully, of course, the best price will be more than what we paid. But it's not necessarily just more than what we paid. It's the best price. And look, I don't know what the best way to do that is, because I don't know about fire trucks, but that's what we're directed to do. We're directed to yield the best price and maximum financial benefit, whatever that may be, whether it's above the purchase price of the truck that we have or below whatever the maximum is. That's what we're supposed to get. And like I say, the comptroller, the state, they won't tell us what way to do it, whether broker, whether RFP, whether auction. They won't tell us. We have to develop our position on it, and hopefully we can, in our file and in our, motion or whatever, we have the reasons why. So, if they ever were to audit us, we can say this is what we thought was going to do best for the village.
But am I understanding it correctly that if it went out to sealed bid, a broker could put a bid in on it, just as a fire district could, or a fire company?
Sure.
And
a broker or private individual, or private company, or a municipality, or a dealership, they could say, wow, this, even if we paid $2.5 million for it, we think we could sell it for more. So yeah, it could be anybody, coming back and could purchase it. And frankly, that's part of, if it turns out it is a broker, that's why I guess we'd ask bond counsel and make sure that, is this going to somehow penalize us as opposed to if we sold it to another municipality or we would, what? I don't know those. That's not my expertise. So, but any way we do it, we would reserve the right to reject all bids, because if it's something that doesn't make sense and turns out it's not the right way to go, then we're not going to be bound to it.
Yeah, I didn't realize the broker could bid on RFP. That's useful. So
I think anyone could, I think, anyone, or, I think anyone could.
yeah, it makes sense. So we would be choosing next what the method is, but we wouldn't award anything until we got advice from Hodgson Russ. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, we wouldn't award it, and I think once we figure out the manner in which we're going to do it, I think we will want to run it by them, make sure that, okay, maybe that's a question that doesn't require much thought, but as long as they say okay, and then once we got a bid in, or numerous bids, we would, and when we consider them, we would run it by, and like I say, I have no idea. Maybe if we sell it to a private company, there's a potential liability as opposed to a municipality. I mean, municipalities buying from other municipalities, they don't have to go through the bidding process that, the state procurement. So if another fire department wants to buy it from us, they can just, they can make a bid, and they don't have to worry about going through, public bidding processes. But it could be anything, and of course, if it is another municipality or someplace that needs money, they might say it's going to take us X number of months to get our act together and get our money available. Whereas, coming with a broker might have a cash deal, and that's something we'd have to look at too and factor that into the maximum financial benefit. I mean, maybe it makes sense to get money up front as opposed to have to, wait, 6 months for them to get their bond together. I don't know. That's we'll have to analyze. We'll have to go past bond counsel, maybe financial, people, and say, well, if we keep the old one for another, 6 months waiting for them to, we're paying this much in interest, and maybe it makes sense to take the, all sorts of permutations.
So
we'll have to analyze.
If we put an RFP out for bids, for sealed bids, in our RFP, we could say, obviously we're going to say the seller has the right to refuse all offers, but could you say something like, if this offer is accepted, it has to be solidified within this time period, just so we're not having to wait 6 months for payment? Could that be one of the stipulations?
Well, yeah, I think we can put whatever terms we want to sell it. I mean, we can also, because not every offer, it's not every offer is going to be a number, on the barrelhead cash tomorrow. So we're going to have to have some wiggle room in our bid that we can, analyze, the time value of money and that. But yeah, I mean, we can put in there that, we prefer, a sale within a certain period of time. However, if you get a fabulous offer from somebody that says, but we have to get our financing, then you can say, well, this is still the maximum benefit to us. And we would have to have some wiggle room to decide, which one we would take. So you can put different contingencies in the offer, or on the other hand, because we have the right to reject any offer, we don't like it, it takes too long, we reject that one.
Okay, and then similarly for a brokerage, if I guess I got lost in the mix there with the procurement. If we need to seek, what was the final answer there? If we need to follow our procurement policy and get multiple quotes, or if that's not considered the type of service it requires?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can do an RFP. I mean, it's my understanding of brokerage is kind of a professional service, so you don't have to go out to bid. And typically the way we get a a professional services, you know, you do an RFP and you get the terms from different, and you pick the one, but it's not a strict, you know, procurement like we were buying goods and services and you have to take the lowest bidder, or you have to piggyback off an existing state contract. But yeah, I mean, I would think if we're looking for a broker in this field, you might want to do an RFP, and you look at it, and when you do an RFP for a broker, it's not, you don't have to take the cheapest. I mean, it's not a competitive bidding, it's professional service, but you certainly want to, you know, make sure you get a good broker, I suppose. So you certainly want to, but do you have to, you don't always do an RFP for professional services. Sometimes you don't. I don't know how many brokers there are in this field around this neck of the woods. Sometimes you're left with what's out there, but RFP for professional services is not as strict as going out to the bidding process. So you have some leeway. Typically you do, if you know, you often do RFPs, but you know, sometimes you know, you need a municipal accountant or whatever, and you pick the one that you like the best. So it's not always an RFP for professional services. Really, it's that's something you don't have to go out to competitive bidding for.
Well, when we do have two brokerage firms interested without even advertising. So I would assume there would be more if it went out for RFP because.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how big the field is. So I'm shooting from the hip here, but you know, yeah, if there's a good market out there, a lot of brokers, and some brokers, I guess, are better than others. You want to get a good one that, you know, charges a reason, that doesn't overcharge. Sure.
Okay, so should the village continue moving forward? It sounds like next steps are determine method, but not the provider. If we choose a broker, and then we reach out to bond counsel to discuss what that method is. Is that right? Or financial, I guess I don't know.
I would say just include everybody on the on whatever email announcing the plan, and then I can reply with any clarification needed, or just reply to the group with our findings. That way, not only myself but Matt and Jason are all on the same page for efficiency.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Pursuant to our procurement policy, couldn't we just get verbal quotes or written quotes from brokers without having to send out an RFP if we already have brokers that are interested? I don't know why we couldn't do that. Simplify it.
I think we can.
You're not maximizing the.
Yeah, I just want to leave anybody out. I'm sure we could be pretty loose on how we accept it. So like if you've already had a conversation with somebody, I think that would be fine to count for that. I just wouldn't want to limit the number of
Our
brokers.
procurement policy only says we have to contact 3 vendors or 2 vendors. I don't know.
But the
I don't know why that
comptroller's
wouldn't be all
office,
right.
the comptroller's office says you have to, you know, do your due diligence to. get
Well,
the
we're
best price
following
on
our
that.
procurement policy. I think that's,
Well,
I'm just trying to
Well,
simplify it.
but to maximize the
Yeah,
value, I think letting people bid in would give us the best.
I'm just talking about the brokerage fee. I'm just talking about picking the broker.
Me too.
Well, procurement is, like I said, it's a little different. Procurement is a different type of goods. Usually that's goods and services like for that are not including professional services. So procurement's a little different. I mean, yeah, but I mean, the board's going to have to decide, do you want to just reach out and get a quotes from several brokers, or do you want to go for a more formal RFP? I just want to suggest that whatever way you do it, you dot your I's and cross your T's, because you don't want an issue with the comptroller and especially lately you hear all these the comptroller's been auditing lots of places lately. And in fact, that someone just in a conversation unrelated to Medina, I was told that, and this is of course volunteer fire companies, but the state comptroller is lately on a kick auditing a lot in the area, well, across the street of volunteer fire companies and finding problems with a lot of their finances and stuff. Not to say that they're going into municipal fire departments. I don't know about that, but whichever way you decide, and whether you get verbal quotes or I would just suggest for our file, we have several, several, and we have it well documented.
Sorry, Matt, were you saying that you think there's a concern with sending it out for bid, that could open us up for a potential conflict with the comptrollers?
No, I'm not saying it would send us out. I'm not saying it would be necessarily a red flag. I'm just saying that the comptroller's been pretty active lately, just doing volunteer fire companies. I don't know why. That's just people have told me. In other areas, not even in Orleans County, Niagara County, but no, I don't think it's going to necessarily red flags. But I think for the sake of doing it properly, we ought to. Whether you do it by asking them for verbal quotes and they just, it would be good to get something in writing because we're talking about a piece of equipment that's potentially $2 million plus. So, whether we reach out to them verbally and say, give us an offer or what you would do, but I think we ought to have several. When I say several, I think we would have, at least, more than three. Whether we do a formal RFP and say respond by a certain date, I don't know if we have to do that, but if we're going to get a hold of brokers, ask them to put their proposal in writing, and we have several, so we decide which one we want to use, just in case. Not going out to a formal RFP, that's not a red flag, I don't think, but not having enough in your file if God forbid we do get a comptroller coming by, you want to have, so look, we had 4 offers and this was the best, and that's why we did it. And let me add, and price is not always the best. It's not always the cheapest. You want a guy that can realize the biggest return for us. So someone that has the biggest, reach, whatever.
So we may have some follow-up questions once we process this. We could probably reach out to you, especially you, Ben, because I'm still thinking about, depending on who we sell it to and as far as the tax implications go. So we might reach out. We'll reach out to everyone in an email with any follow-up questions. Is that all right, Ben?
Yep, no, that's perfect.
Okay.
Ben, could I clarify something quick? So the tax implications are only tax that's due on the profit that is made off of the sale. It's not like $1.7 million that you don't pay tax on that. So it's like anything else. We sell it at a profit. We are subject to federal income tax on that or a capital gain on it unless it goes to a capital purchase. We're not subject because we are a municipality. We're not subject to New York State tax on that. It is just a federal rate on anyone that made money, correct? From my research.
That is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Good question.
Oh, I'm sorry if I cut you off. So that's going to be the crux of our research because it does depend on not only selling it, how much you sell it for, who the buyer is. There's a lot of permutations like Ed mentioned. So once we get to that bridge, I'll be able to send an email to the village outlining exactly what happens should you sell it for X amount of money to Y buyer. That's the moving parts that Ed referred to earlier.
Okay, thanks.
So can I ask
Yep.
one other question? So if we sent it out for an RFP that went to brokers and to everyone, and we got these bids, you would be willing to sit with us as we looked at these bids and go over the tax implications of every single bid that we had? Would you be able to do that with the board to help us make a decision?
That may not be necessary depending on who the buyer is. So it kind of goes into the decision that we discussed earlier, like A, village decides to sell, B, who is it going to? In the event that becomes necessary, I can be available as needed. But that's kind of another example of let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
Right, not to speak for, I know he had to drop off, but I think that's kind of what he was getting at before when he said, in the spirit of trying to minimize, impact to the village in terms of like research and stuff. If all your bids come back and they're all municipal entities, then it may be a simple answer, or if it does get more complicated than that, that's where additional, research could be done.
Exactly. Yep.
So I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I have to make sure I understand this. So if it's a municipal entity that buys it, it's a lot simpler than if a broker decides to buy it.
Generally speaking, yes.
Brokers don't buy fire trucks. They get you with a buyer. So they're just there. It's like a realtor. Realtor isn't buying my house and selling it to my neighbor. Just to clarify that, it's not
more tax implications on that if you go through a broker.
No, there's no tax implications on any of the funds that have been expended for the purchase of it. Tax implications come on the profit side of it.
Right.
If you were selling your house or whatever it may be, there's a percentage there. We're subject to federal gain gain on the money, which is just whatever it might be on it, unless we categorize it as unrealized tax gains for a purchase of something else, which we would work through. And I'm sure Jada could weigh in on that and we would do our own research before we did it.
Okay. If no one has anything else, I want to thank you all for your time. This was very, very, very helpful to all of us to hear this at the same time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yep. Happy to help.
Thank you.
And I'll see you tonight, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Right, we have a board meeting. All right.